Hello everybody and welcome again to another edition of Papa Bojo's Kitchen. Well, it's Christmas holiday season and that means it's time to make smoked kielbasa. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use two separate videos to show this because it's a lengthy process. For this first one we're going to cover the spices, the ingredients, the cutting of the meat, and the grinding of the meat. And the second one we'll do the stuffing of the casings and then the smoking process. So first, let's start with the ingredients. I've got one, it's about an 8-pound, but by the time it's all ground and we take the bone out and everything, it'll probably be around 5 pounds of pork shoulder or pork butt, same thing. I've got my casings, hog casings. I've got those soaking in water per the process. Follow your directions when you get the casings. I've got 2.5 tablespoons of freshly cracked black pepper. I use a mortar and a pestle, and I'm going to do a video showing you how to use a mortar and a pestle upcoming, but I crushed that. I've got pink salt, Himalayan salt, and that I also crushed with mortar and pestle, and another teaspoon, that's 2 tablespoons of salt. I've got a separate side teaspoon of salt. I've got 2 tablespoons of sugar, and I've got 1 heaping teaspoon of marjoram that I also partially crushed with the mortar and pestle. You're also going to need 2 cups of extremely cold water for this, and we'll get into the kneading process when it's time to do that. Notice I've got the coarse grinder here. This is an attachment I've got for my KitchenAid, and it works fantastic. You'll see. I've got the coarse grinder, and we're going to put all of the meat through that. I'm going to separate the fat from the meat. All of the meat's going to go through the coarse grater. Then half of that meat is going to go again through this medium grater, and there's the medium grater, and all of the fat is going to go through my finest grater. Okay, so I also have 3 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to use my crusher, and I'm going to crush this because you want it very, very fine when it's mixed in with all the meat. That's the ingredients. Let's get to prepping the meat. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to separate all of the fat. And it's okay if some of the meat comes off with the fat because, again, it's all going to be eventually mixed in together. But you want to get all the fat, especially this fat cap, cut off. So I've got my pork shoulder all cut and separated. I've got my pieces of all the fat within the pork shoulder. And if you look, there's a little bit of meat mixed up in there. That's okay. And then I've got my chunks of actual meat. And if you see there's a little bit of fat in there, that's okay. But you want to get most of the fat separated from the meat when you grind it so you can grind it through the 3 different types of discs. So now all that there is to do is grind the meat. And so now we're going to fill the hopper up with meat and continue to fill it up. I'm going to turn my grinder up. You can see how the meat is coming out of the grinder. Nice. And we're going to continue doing this until all of the meat has been ground. So now all my meat has been ground, and what I'm doing is I've taken the coarse grinder out, and I'm going to put the medium grinder in, and then I'm going to take half of this meat and we're going to put it through, half of it through this medium grinder. So you can see how coarse this is. And now I put the meat through here. You see it'll come out much finer. See, that's the finer grind. That's what you want for half of your meat. And now I want to run all of my fat through the very fine grinder. And you can see what the very fine looks like with the fat. So now that we have all of our meat ground, you see it? It's all right there. Then we have to mix it all together. We mix it before we add our seasonings so we get all of this fat and the coarse grind and the medium grind meat all evenly mixed. So we're going to do this, and we're really going to squeeze it and pinch it and get all this stuff really mixed well. Now that we have the meat all evenly mixed, next we're going to take all of our seasonings all at one time, and we're going to put them in, and we're going to mix these in until they're pretty well distributed throughout the meat. Now that we've mixed all of the ingredients together, we're going to take 2 cups of ice cold water, minus the ice cubes. We're going to pour this in. Because the ice cubes took up some volume, I should have used a strainer, but I didn't. Add a little bit more. And now we're going to knead this together for 10 to 15 minutes until you get a really, really sticky meat. That 10 to 15 minutes is critical. After between 10 and 15 minutes of kneading this dough and getting it sticky, you're going to take your garlic and you're going to try to evenly distribute as much as possible, because we're going to be mixing this in again by hand. And then after we're done mixing, we're going to stick this into the fridge for about 1 hour. So now I've got that garlic, I'm spreading it around, and now I'm going to start folding it in. And I'm going to mix this for another 5 minutes. So I've kneaded the meat mixture with my hands again for another 5 minutes, and it is really nice and super sticky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap, and I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator for 1.5 hours.